It's not that savvy media consumers believe Trump, it's that the cherry-picking and emotional driving that the media engages in is so obvious. They try to stack everything in their favor, from the couple facts they select as starting points to dramatic gestures like throwing down pens. But almost everything this anchor says here is either twisted, exaggerated, or turns out, on closer examination, to have been wrong.
Look, no one disputes.
This is what I mean by twisted. He says, no one disputes, then inaccurately states the factual basis.
No one disputes that a week ago there were some projections that showed a possible slight effect on a small sliver of Alabama. The point is,
a week ago, a few days before the controversy, many models showed that Dorian could cross Florida and the center of the storm could actually come on shore in Alabama or even further west. And then in the days following that, as the center of the storm approached the Bahamas, forecasts continued to show large parts of Alabama could be affected with hurricane-force winds, even up to the day of the controversy and the day after that.
The point is that on Sunday, by the time he started warning Alabama, those were outdated and the projections no longer said Alabama was in the zone.
Either he's lying to you or the people that wrote his script are lying or didn't check. Trump's warnings for Alabama weren't that strong on Sunday, but advisories from a week before this CNN program showed the full storm could cross Alabama, and a sliver was still included on the day in question.
As the National Weather Service a few minutes later said so.
It wasn't the National Weather Service, it was a tweet from the NWS forecast office in Birmingham. It's worth noting that Alabama is covered by 4 National Weather Service forecast offices, and each one has a Twitter account. In fact, the entire media reaction stemmed from 3 short exchanges: a tweet from Trump at 7:51 a.m. Sunday morning, a tweeted response from the National Weather Service forecast office in Birmingham 20 minutes later at 8:11 a.m., and one sentence pulled from the FEMA briefing which started at 12:30 p.m. Yet all through this period, the National Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released many advisories showing an ongoing chance of storm-force winds in southeast Alabama. Trump had used the word hit in his tweet that morning, but it's clear this was a secondary list. In addition to Florida, it starts. Everything was focused on Florida at that point since the storm was right off the coast there, was still a Category 5, and could shortly thereafter have made landfall in Florida. He listed Alabama at the end of the list and said it would most likely be hit much harder, all matters of degree, unlike the point where the eye of the storm makes landfall. There's a slight chance of confusion, but he clearly didn't mean all of those states would be hit by the eye of the hurricane, as the news reports and comedy shows would have you believe. These media reports take a slight chance of confusion and make sure as much of their audience as possible remains confused. On the other hand, the tweet from the Birmingham forecast office used the word impacts, and used absolute terms to say there would be none at all, even though official advisories clearly showed that there was still a chance of Alabama feeling some effects from the storm. If the Birmingham tweet had boldly stated that the eye of the storm will not hit Alabama, repeat, the eye of the storm will not hit Alabama, the media merely would have had one less detail that they had to distort and twist. So while the Birmingham tweet was actually out of bounds and anti-scientific, the president's statements hedged and left himself wiggle room and stayed within bounds, and are being intentionally misunderstood in these media productions. So much for respect for the office.
And most importantly, Trump was wrong.
Really, that's the most important thing? What kind of a person says that? And he's not even as wrong as they are, as I will show in about 10 seconds.
Because 20 minutes later, the National Weather Service had to issue a clarification saying, and this is real, Alabama will not see any impacts from Dorian. We repeat, no impacts from Hurricane Dorian will be felt across Alabama. The system will remain too far east.
But at the time of that tweet, the National Hurricane Center of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration actually did include part of Alabama in its tropical storm force wind advisories. And it was this exact same tweet that NOAA was rebuking when they said the Birmingham National Weather Service spoke in absolute terms that were inconsistent with probabilities from the best forecast products available at the time. The same statement also said that information provided by NOAA and the National Hurricane Center to President Trump and the wider public demonstrated that tropical storm force winds from Hurricane Dorian could impact Alabama. None of the other accounts tweeted a direct response to the president's references to Alabama, but later the same evening, the NWS forecast office for Mobile, Alabama tweeted, "The upcoming week could be a little warmer and drier than a typical week in September, and it all comes down to Dorian." This guy gets so far out over his skis with his jokes, it's almost sad that ultimately he's so wrong. Each of the video titles that I used in this commentary says so much. The MSNBC segment reads like a military psyop. This one includes the word obsessed.
Pump your brakes there, Al Roker. No one's apologizing because that map does not prove anything. First of all, it's not from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's from the South Florida Water Management District.
I'm starting to notice it's a running joke to make fun of local and regional offices with these people. If the Birmingham Forecast Office hadn't gone against Trump, they would have minimized them. Like, you pretty much say the name of a regional department and people laugh.
Plus, right at the bottom of the map it says, National Hurricane Center advisories and county emergency management statements supersede this product. If anything on this graphic causes confusion, ignore the entire product.
But as we've seen throughout this video, forecasts from the National Hurricane Center included the southeast corner of Alabama during the time in question and for another 24 hours into Monday afternoon. These performers need to have a talk with their writers, who need to have a talk with the news department, because these people are getting sent out on the national stage with bad information. Only the one tweet from the Birmingham field office used such absolute language. Information from NOAA and the NHC continued to show Alabama could be affected. Later that Sunday evening, the NWS Forecast Office in Tallahassee, which actually includes the southeast corner of Alabama, reinforced the National Hurricane Center warnings, not the cavalier stance taken by Birmingham and subsequently picked up by the narrative-driven media.
And it may get a little piece of a great place. It's called Alabama, and Alabama could even be in for at least some very strong winds, and something more than that it could be. This just came up, unfortunately, the size of the storm that we're talking about. So for Alabama, just please be careful also.
That's all he said. It was a very calm, measured, mature perspective regarding preparedness, and it also responded appropriately to the Birmingham Forecast Office's tweet, since Trump clarified that he meant possibilities of storm force winds, as stated in the advisories.